So this is the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, February 6th. Happy February, everybody. This meeting is being recorded, and we are holding this meeting Zoom this evening. So as Chris has already said to attendees, if you have a comment or a question, please raise your hand and we will work to recognize folks. Because we're doing a Zoom meeting, we're going to do roll call votes tonight, and we're going to start with roll call attendance. So Jonathan Hankin.
Here.
Malcolm Fick.
Here.
Jeremy Ega.
Here.
Pedro Pachano.
Present.
Brandy Nelson, present. So Jackie says she'll join us in a few minutes. We'll just keep an eye out for that, Chris. All right, so the first item on our agenda are Form As. Chris, I don't see that we have any.
No Form As.
No Form As. So then we'll move on to the next item, the minutes of January 23rd. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Second. Malcolm.
Thank you, Malcolm. All right, do we have any discussion on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, we'll vote. Jonathan?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. And I'm just calling everybody's names in the order you're appearing on my screen, so we'll stick with that tonight unless you guys click out. All right, moving on to item 4, Town Planners Report. Chris, do you have anything to report out?
Just briefly, for the planning board and for folks who are listening, next week starts the budget process to review the town's FY26 budget, proposed FY26 budget. The Select Board and Finance Committee begin their meetings on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and followed by Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Wednesday, they'll take up some various departments, including boards and committees, including the planning board. You'll see this year's planning board keeps the secretarial recording clerk line, but in addition to other committees, we've proposed zeroing out supplies lines, training lines, and other things. And we can discuss that more at the meeting. And February 18th is the next meeting after that, followed by the 20th, and then a public hearing in early March. So that's all on the website. Take a look. Proposed budget is there too. It's easy to navigate PDF. Come to the meetings, ask me questions if you have any. We'll see you then.
All right, so in terms of that meeting on the 12th that has to do with boards and committees or includes boards and committees, Chris, is that also at 6 p.m.?
It's at 6, yeah, and there are Zoom options for all of them.
I was going to ask if there were hybrid options. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, all right, great. So we'll get into the meat and potatoes of our meeting this evening, which is finalizing the draft zoning amendments that we've been working on the last few months. Those draft amendments were discussed at our second meeting in January. Chris incorporated the comments that were made by various members of this board, and we went ahead and received revised drafts, I think earlier this week, or maybe it was the end of last week. So we'll start with the first one, residential cluster developments, discuss and finalize proposed new residential cluster development bylaw, and the deletion of the PERD bylaw. Our objective is to finalize that and vote to submit a draft proposal to the select board. Chris, are you able to share these on screen so that we can discuss them?
Sure. Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please. And we'll just take these items for zoning as they are appearing on the agenda. All right, so we're sharing on screen the proposed language for the residential cluster development bylaw. I guess I would just ask if any of the board members have any additional questions or comments about the bylaw language.
Well, yeah, I had, I don't know if it's in here or not, because I haven't looked at the latest draft.
Okay.
I don't think. It's really important to put in language about how to amend a PERD.
Yeah, I haven't put that in here yet, so I'd like to maybe discuss with you where that might go.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, so this first page that's being shown on screen, Chris, this is really just sort of the
objective,
the objective of the bylaw, yes,
Right.
okay.
right?
Alright.
So, down to the next page, so it's proposal to delete the planned unit residential development and insert this new section. So somewhere in here, Jonathan, we should get to the point that you raised at the last meeting is how do you amend something that was permitted
Yeah.
previously with a special permit under the old section 8.5, the planned unit residential?
Yeah.
And so in terms of that language, you think that that should
Yeah.
be under purpose, Chris, or
Um,
under, or maybe it's its own section?
Or
Yeah.
it could go under use regulations or something. I don't know. It's just important to get it there somewhere.
mhm. Sorry if I'm scrolling too fast and just trying to find the applicable place.
Got to be on the first page, I think.
Yeah, I think you're
I
right,
agree.
right up front somewhere, maybe under applicability. We could add, Jonathan, do you have something you could?
I think, didn't I send it to you? I think I did. I don't know. I've got so many iterations of this.
Projects, I don't know, approved as
Yeah,
a,
it's basically something to the effect, and I'll send you the exact language, but it's something to the effect that projects previously approved under the PERD bylaw may be modified as long as all the proposed improvements are fully in conformance with this section.
Maybe modified, consistent with the improvements of, or
Where
the
is
language
she-
of this section.
Sorry,
modified
what?
by right. Rather than requiring them to have a special permit, right?
Maybe modified by right.
Well, this section allows them to modify it by right.
True,
This
true.
is a by right section.
Maybe
Modified, I think it should say consistent with this section,
Well,
just
or in conformance with this section.
in
is
conformance
fine.
is fine.
okay. It's good working language. Any thoughts on that?
Nope.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't want to allow previous projects to be sort of grandfathered to the PERD? And if they wanted to make a change, they could do it according to the PERD?
are.
Or is your purpose to make, since this is obviously a much better bylaw, is your purpose to take that away so that they then use this language instead?
I would think
The-
it's
Only
the
if they,
latter.
only if they want to modify it.
Yeah,
They ha-
if it's a previous project has been approved under the PURD previously, it has a special permit in place. That special permit is and remains effective, similar to grandfathering any other use.
Right.
That special permit remains. So they
Right.
can keep it as long as they want. It runs with the land. And they have to abide by that special permit still. And this will allow them to make modifications since there's no other vehicle now, this would allow modifications.
Should we say then that any projects previously approved under PERD has to be in conformance with this section and with existing special permits?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, like,
No.
do we, no? Why not?
Well, because the special permit says that you can only build 20 houses on North Plain Road.
Right.
So if someone were to come back and say, I'd like to put a cluster someplace there, why can't they do that? We're writing this bylaw to try to create a section that, hopefully everyone will use so that we get the density that we need.
And so just for context, just for us to remember, so the PERDs that we had identified, right, are Forest Row, Christian Hill Commons, Copper Beach Lane, and the new North Plain Road Habitat for Humanity development. So it's 4 different developments that are currently identified in our background section.
So if you look at Burning Bush, for example, like if they wanted to add more units to those townhouses,
That's
Burning
not a,
Tree,
that's
that's
not a
an,
PERD.
yeah, that's an
oh, it's not a PERD?
OSRD.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought that
No.
was a PERD.
Open space residential design or development.
No, OSRD.
Might as well be a PERD though, those townhouses.
I would like to, I think I'd like to clarify what I said before. So if it has a special permit now, as North Plain Road would, as any previous PERD would,
Mhm.
you know, technically the only way to amend an existing special permit is through another special permit process. I think that'd be consistent with state law. I think if it has a special permit, the only way to modify it is special permit.
So do we want to say then projects previously approved under the PERD bylaw may have their special permits amended? Do we need to state that?
I don't think we need to state it. I
No.
think that, yeah.
Okay.
But I
you
can
said-
check with council.
Yeah.
and-
Okay.
Yeah, if the PERD no longer exists in our bylaw, then, well, the special permit stands by itself, I guess. It doesn't have to reference back to the PERD.
I think you're right, yeah.
All right. Great. So that'll be our working language. This obviously process-wise is going to go to the select board, then come back to us for public hearing, and we could still make some minor what did we decide? We can make changes that don't modify the intention.
Can I push back on a couple of things before we move on?
Sure.
So in the density section, I'm going to
Okay.
push back on these same items that I brought up last time, I think. Item number 1. So again, if we have lot coverage, setbacks, if we already have dimensional requirements, why are we requiring double the lot size? Doesn't make any sense to me. Like if you're, I mean, at the lowest level, if a person in R2 has 1 acre, they can fit 4 units on it. They can cover it, you know, with 20% and fit more than 4 units on it. Still, they would need 2 acres in order to do it. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're trying to limit density here, we're already doing it with the density requirements that we're imposing. Somebody walk me through why we need double the lot size.
I don't know if we do, Pedro. That may end up being self-limiting based on infrastructure requirements. You know, it's if it requires septic systems as opposed to sewer connection, it may just require much more space to accommodate that infrastructure, for instance.
Right, that's what I mean. So why are we requiring this? The project's viability will already be determined by the zoning requirements, by these dimensional requirements. Why do we need to increase them? And by, like you're saying, Brandon, they'll also be limited by their infrastructure requirements.
I don't have a problem with striking.
Because, you know,
that portion.
if somebody has a 1-bedroom house now and they want to put 3 more units on it, and they've got a septic that accommodates 6 houses, or I think Title V requires 5 rooms now, they'll have enough septic.
3 bedrooms.
I think it requires 5, John. I think they changed it recently.
Well, last I checked, it was 3, but
But it
But you
doesn't
see
matter.
my
I mean,
point.
It has to meet the requirements and it has to meet the coverage,
Yeah.
maximum site coverage. So I
Exactly.
agree with it.
You agree with striking at least twice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, just to be quick about it, number 4, I push back against this again. I mean, I think that having these kind of requirements for setting maximum and minimums, it might, and let me know if you think I'm crazy here, it might lead to the situation where we are creating sort of mono communities, right? So wouldn't it be better to allow maybe a 3-bedroom, 2,200 square foot among a bunch of 900 square feet, 1 bedroom or studio spaces and a couple of 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms?
Would you like to use an average?
I don't know how to deal with it, except maybe setting a maximum of maybe, I don't know, 2,200 square feet or 2,500 square feet. Because, everybody needs housing. Families need housing too.
Yeah, it does seem like it turns it into a regulation for tiny home clusters.
No reason why you can't, I mean, there are plenty of developments out there that cluster,
Larger.
3 bedrooms with studios.
But I think the intent here, I don't object to that, Pedro, but I think that we should limit the percentage of houses that could exceed 1,200 square feet. Because I don't think you want all of them to be 2,300. Then it's no longer a cottage development.
Right, so that's good, finding some way to actually produce a mix.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the mix.
I'm not sure
Okay.
how we do that.
Average.
There is average, but average can be played with pretty wildly, right? We've got one giant
Yeah.
house and a bunch of tiny little cottages.
I don't know how that would work. But maybe it's
Um,
something to think about, I'm not sure we have to solve it now, unless you want to, Brandy. But, because I think it's kind of a difficult question, how you solve that, how do you figure that out? How do you actually create a good mix of size housing and can accommodate families and single people and everything in between?
well, do we speak to that in the purpose? Because the purpose now says design guidelines to foster the development of smaller residential units clustered. We don't say anything about
Well,
a mix of
but this will still do that.
this
Right,
being
I
one.
think it might not
If
be
you-
a bad idea, your suggestion, Brandy, but I still think there needs to be some limiting equation or something that says if you're doing 10 houses, 2 of them can be 2,500 feet. The rest of them have to be an average of 800 to 1,200, something like that. I don't know. I don't know how we come up with something that is workable, but that's the idea.
And I think if there's a relatively small percentage, say 20 or 25%, that would be allowed to exceed the 1,200 square feet, that would be all right.
At least 75% of the units shall have maximum net
Yeah.
usable
Sure,
1,200.
you could try that.
Yeah, that works.
All right, so just to be clear for Chris's editing purposes, in number 1, we're gonna strike the first sentence and leave the second sentence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in number 4, at least 25% of the units shall have maximum,
Mm.
at least 25% of the units.
They'll have a maximum.
Sorry.
Well, shouldn't you say
Is that-
maybe no more than 7, no more than?
Is the goal is to encourage variability, right? But to
generally
keep
keeping
it generally small. So I don't know if 25 units shall have a maximum.
I think it was, oh, sorry, I think it was
75, yeah, okay.
At least 75% of the units shall have a maximum net use. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. You might want to, small m.
And is item 1 okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
RCD will develop the structures on one lot or on contiguous lot.
Should that be an RCD? Just
Yeah,
to be picky.
it should be.
Okay.
All right.
What else are you pushing, Pedro?
Okay, so back on the dimensional requirements in the R4, can somebody walk me through why having a lower coverage in the largest district is either a good idea or workable for the RCD?
Just Chris, refresh our memory. Did we carry over coverage from the current dimensional table?
Yeah, it's carried over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so Pedro, your question is why should we? I think we're doing it to be consistent, but are you asking that this bylaw have a different coverage than the underlying zone?
I'm just wondering, right, if you do have just 2 acres,
Yeah. That would give you 8,800 square feet of building of coverage.
Well, generally the R4 in Great Barrington, which encompasses, a good deal of sort of the Seekonk Valley, Alfred Brook Valley area, as well as the Monument Valley area. Those are areas where, through zoning, the town has said these shall be relatively lower density areas because of steep slopes, poor soils, difficult to locate septics, aquifer protection areas. So the R4 standard is set for low density on purpose based on the characteristics of those sections of town.
I'd say for now, Pedro, leave that one as is, since we've left all the others consistent.
Recommend keeping it consistent.
all right, just two more questions. In 5.6, the use of the word tract. You see it there, RCD tract.
Uh-huh.
So does that mean that the open space has to equal the size of the development and not the size or the percentage of the size of the lot? Is that what we're saying here?
It should probably just say parcels or lot.
Either lot or the project?
I guess
Just
project. Because a project might be several contiguous lots.
I mean, why use the word at all? Why just not say all the land within the RCD, which is not
Yeah.
covered by building?
That's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think-
that would
thank
work
you.
too.
Thank you, right.
And then you
Addition
have
by
the word-
subtraction.
Then you have the word tract at the end of the paragraph too.
Yeah. Take
Okay.
both those out.
In 5.7, I was just wondering if having 2 entrances to a project that has 40 units is too much. In other
No.
words, have 40 dwellings and only have 1 entry?
30, no?
Oh, you mean up to 40?
Yeah. I was just thinking that, wow, that's a lot for 1 entrance to handle.
I see 30 to 40 pretty commonly in my
Yeah?
work. Yeah.
The
That's the existing bylaw too. I think.
the development at the old log home site off Bridge Street at Bentley, that's 45 units with 1 main driveway into 1 main parking lot.
That's fine.
Chris, Jackie is in the audience.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, I have one final comment to make here. It's in the 5.8 section. Just kind of in the interest of making the process a little maybe less risky for people who maybe want to do larger, or even for people who want to do a small development. In the requirements for site plan review, I'm wondering if we can strike out architectural plans and just use site plans instead and not require elevations. I think I understand the reason why we would want to see them, but I'm wondering if maybe we can make those requirements of the special permit.
There
Not
is no special
requirements.
permit.
I mean,
There is no special permit.
yeah, I got it. It's requirements of the site plan. I don't know. It just seems like it's a lot of investment, even for somebody trying to do somebody trying to do a larger project. Obviously, it's less of a burden, but somebody trying to do a smaller project, it might be more of a burden. I'm thinking about people who are not developers, who are just property owners themselves who might want to do this, or somebody who doesn't have all the capital to go through the whole, design professional process. If
Mhm.
maybe just having site plans and engineering plans that just kind of outline the project,
Although
that would be enough.
10.5 does require us to opine on unreasonable departure from character, material, scale as viewed from public ways and places. So
Well, I'm
without
thinking
at
that,
least,
yeah, I was just thinking that we're kind of making we're defining what site plan review means in the RCD, just like the dimensional requirements, we're putting it in there, which means that they're different, even though they're not different. You understand what I'm saying? Since we're putting the language in there, it means that it supersedes
Additive.
yeah,
No,
Yeah.
this is the preliminary site plan. I think the site plan
right.
review
That's what I
is.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
For preliminary
The
site plan,
technical
I
stuff.
think if we can make at least the elevations and part of the site plan, not the preliminary, and strike out the architectural plans, because I don't know how much oversight we really have on architectural plans.
What I would think is that you could put in something including typical elevations, so that you don't have to do every one of them. But the way you're proposing it, Pedro, someone could go through this process, then come in with the site plan review and have really ugly buildings that no one wants. And they've spent all that money for development. So it's better to, I think,
But that's kind of exactly my problem, is that somebody putting ugly buildings that no one wants except the person proposing them, right? They might think that the buildings are beautiful.
Do you, what about in the pre, am I on mute?
No, you're not. We can hear you,
Okay.
Jeremy.
What about in the, not the site plan, but the preliminary site plan, if you, for projects above a certain size, you require it, and then, but not for the small, because I think especially if it lines up with more like the number of units that are allowed by right now anyway.
Maybe it's better to add a sentence that says we may waive these provisions. So that you've got some flexibility.
But do you, I mean, who's waiving them? Is
The
it
planning board.
Chris is waiving them? Because, I mean, this is like the preliminary site plan is the first time we see them, right?
Yep.
So we would have to agree to waive their architectural plans if they wanted to do that.
So they'd have to show up before their preliminary to.
Well, they have to, according to this process. They show up to
Chris,
give.
Where did this process come from? Because maybe it does get dialed back to just a sketch plan and a narrative that describes what's being proposed, and then we just default to the 10.5 requirements. Does that sound more reasonable?
It sounds like a reasonable approach. I'm not sure. Maybe this is partially left from the PURD bylaw. One reason to see architectural plans of buildings, meaning floor plans of buildings, would be to understand how the circulation of each building relates to the rest of the site, front doors, back doors, whatever, parking areas. Elevations, as Brandy hinted to, help to determine maybe, whether it fits into quote unquote the character of the area. That's one of your site plan considerations.
Pedro's
So
favorite
worth
word.
keeping, maybe worth keeping, but maybe at the not in this preliminary stage. Typical
So-
elevation, I think, is a good suggestion. Maybe you don't need architectural plans.
But I hear what you're saying about the additional detail, but I think, what if we take that paragraph on preliminary site plan application and just say, you know, as part of the preliminary site plan review, the planning board will identify additional detailed information that may be required for site plan approval under 10.5. And it may include this list of things.
Mm.
That would give us some amount of flexibility in terms of the size and scale of a project. So if you had a pancake flat lot that was 1 acre and you're putting, you know, 4 1,200 square foot units on it, maybe less complicated than if you have a really slopey lot with resource constraints and you're trying to put 12 units on it, right? But we would learn about the characteristics of a property as part of the preliminary site plan review, and we would be able to have a dialogue with the applicant about the level of detail they may need to provide to us so that we can undertake a 10.5.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having a list of things because that will give the ambitious applicant an idea of how to make the town happy or how to make their process less onerous.
Well, I mean, could we say something like facilitate site plan review, the applicant is encouraged to provide XXXXX, because that's
Yeah.
really what it's all about, right? To give the applicant the feedback, in order to, you know, I mean, we could leave this whole list of things in here, but not make it mandatory. We could say the applicant is encouraged to provide this this detail to facilitate the approval process.
If the preliminary process provides the board an indication of these things, you know, a statement of intent as to how you will meet 1, 2, 3, and then we say, you know, during 10.5, additional details may be required.
Mhm.
Yeah, Malcolm, if we do it the way you're suggesting, I would read that as a sort of mandate. If we do it the way Brandy's suggesting, I read that more as a you might expect to be required to submit these things.
Discretionary.
Mhm.
Right.
So what's your thought then, Brandy? What would this paragraph turn into?
I would take the paragraph for preliminary site plan application and I would move it down to below the site plan review. Additional requirements may include all these things. And then in preliminary site plan, just a narrative description of the project, including design, open space, utilities, roadways, parking areas, etc. A sketch plan and a narrative. That would be low bar to bring a concept to the board for discussion. And then after discussion with the board, we could give feedback that, you know, your project is 60 units, you should expect to provide detail on all the infrastructure and the utilities and the design, or your project is 4 units on a flat site, and you need to come back with the base requirements of 10.5. So we would make for the RCD additive items that are discretionary for the board.
Okay,
I like that. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you,
and how
Petra. I
about
hadn't considered that.
so that sentence that starts the preliminary application shall include information regarding XXX, that could just stay, right? Because that's really what we want.
Yes.
The site's proposed services, utilities, proximate location, including lighting, household waste, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, where it says the application shall also include a discussion of, I think, right?
Yep.
Your or I'm sorry, Malcolm, you're saying from preliminary application shall include information. We're not asking for a layout, just maybe we say narrative
Yeah, that should
information
all,
or something.
that should just stay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really the heart of the preliminary
You
site
want,
plan.
this highlighted section to stay in the preliminary plan?
Yes.
I would think so, yeah.
And then what about this?
And then the detailed engineering and et cetera, that would be supplemental information that may be required as part of 10.5.
But it would be required as part of 10.5 now anyway, isn't it?
Some of it, I think
Yeah,
that's something
sure.
that we want to think about, right?
The architectural plans and elevations aren't necessary.
Right,
No, I think I
right.
think the planning
I
board
pulled-
site plan application encourages elevations for new construction. So yeah, actually the application includes that checkbox. Yeah.
Just looking at the submittal requirements, it's lot layout and dimensions, access roads, so roadways, open space, major features. Let's see, proposed well and septic, proposed stormwater, proposed landscaping, proposed lighting. What else? Potentially traffic. I don't see architectural plans, Chris, under,
It's part of the application cover page itself where
okay,
and it has to sit, their name, the address. It's the 2-page site plan review application cover sheet, and I think there's a box for new construction to include a typical elevation.
okay.
So you want, let's see, is this where I'm typing here, is this a shall or a may? Are encouraged to include?
Can we think about it?
You
We can
know,
leave encouraged to include now and we can decide if it needs to be a
Well,
shall or a may.
I think they shall include.
Yeah, you have to have,
this is the preliminary stage.
I think that,
Yeah.
I wouldn't cross out the preliminary application shall, because
Okay,
I think that's what it should.
yeah.
It's just information, it's not plans. So do we want to say preliminary shall include narrative information? So that someone doesn't think they have to put plans together?
the narrative,
Shall include a
narrative.
narrative?
The narrative shall include.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think that works. Because we're saying in the preceding sentence, there's a narrative description of the project.
Yeah,
And then the second paragraph, first sentence, that can be added to site plan review, right?
This. All of this.
Yes. I guess
Missing
there's
an
a
I.
question there, is that a may or a shall? This is where we wanted to have
No.
discretion, right?
No, I think it shall include those.
But we're not responding to Pedro's comment about scale of project and whether or not it is applicable. And if we wanted to use a preliminary application process to make a judgment call, then saying shall under the site plan review section takes away the discretionary piece of requiring
No,
additional technical information.
There are two different phases of the application, though. In the first one, you don't have to do it, but in the second one, you do.
That wasn't the intent that I was trying to communicate earlier. What I was trying to communicate was that if an RCD is small and simplistic, we may not need some of the detailed additional items beyond what's already in 10.5. And so I was trying to leave that section so that it's at the planning board's discretion, depending on project complexity. to require, a more detailed architectural engineering drawing
Yeah, I
think
like
this
that.
is-
above and beyond what's required in 10.5.
The information I'm highlighting here is this is required of all site plan projects. It doesn't, I mean,
So then
anything.
it's redundant if
Well,
to have
I
it
think
there.
it is.
10.5, yeah.
I think it's a little redundant.
Okay, so then strike it. Let's not have it at all.
And I propose a modest edit.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Just in the first sentence where it says preliminary site plan application, top paragraph,
Hmm?
use the word project 3 times in that one sentence, and I would just get rid of, you say narrative description, why don't you get rid of the project? Because I think it would be clear if you read it, because right now it's clunky.
Thank
Wait,
you.
we specialize in that.
Project,
Plunk.
Clunky.
Funky.
Plonk.
just a term of art, clunky's good.
And you can remove the last one too.
Oh, I was
Uh,
being,
What else
Kind.
are we gonna be discussing if it's not the project?
Pedro, anything else?
No, it looks good. I like it. Thank you.
All right, so we have a draft we feel comfortable with right now for referral.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done, everyone. Thank you. So we want to vote on these individually, Chris?
I think that'd be clearest.
Okay.
I
All right.
move we forward this to we're forwarding it to the select board, right?
To the select board, correct?
Yes, I move
Second.
we forward.
So we have
Second.
a motion by Malcolm. We have a second by Jonathan. Do we have any further discussion on from the board? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Jonathan,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Pedro,
All right.
Brandy, aye. All right, thank you. Move on to the next one, the open space requirements. Discuss and finalize proposed amendments to zoning section 8.3.3, the open space requirement for a multi-unit residential dwelling. Again, the goal is to submit a draft proposal, to vote to submit a draft proposal to the select board for consideration. So we're sharing on screen. All right, so we did make some edits to this. I guess, do we need to review any of these as a group? I think we were fine with this one last time, right?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Do any members of the board have any additional comments or questions for inclusion in this draft?
No.
Hearing none, would someone like to entertain a motion to forward this zoning item to the select board?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Malcolm.
Yep.
Do we have any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none. And if Kim is ready, we'll go ahead and vote. Jonathan, how do you vote?
Aye. Aye.
Malcolm?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye.
And
All right.
just for folks who are listening, these are all still in draft form, just for everybody's edification. So the select board will see, they won't see the red lines, they'll see a clean version, but it's still a draft. That's the draft that will go to the planning board's public hearing in March. For the planning board to finalize in March, and then if the planning board decides to move it to town meeting. So we're still in a draft process, but we're moving it towards a final draft.
Excellent. Okay, great. So that was lightning speed, folks. We'll move on to the campus overlay district. Similar to the previous two, discuss and finalize proposed draft campus overlay district zoning for the Simons Rock property and vote to submit draft proposal to the select board. Let Chris bring that one up on screen for us. I think our homework from the last meeting was to take a look at whether or not there were any items we think should potentially be excluded recognizing that the campus currently operates under an educational exemption, and recognizing that the adjacent property uses in and around the campus are predominantly residential or agricultural in nature, and also recognizing that there are a variety of building use types on the campus, and at least from my perspective, I'd like to see, you know, flexibility and adaptive reuse for those buildings, some of which, you know, obviously doesn't align with the current underlying zoning. So let's see, so we've got it on screen now, campus overlay. Did anyone have any particular comments on other sections outside of the use regulations?
Well, can we go through it, Brandy?
Sure. We need to read it, or do you want to just read it on screen?
Well, I have some
Anything
red
for the
lines, and
purpose? Do you
I
have
have
red
some
lines for
red-
purpose?
I have red lines, but I'm not sure I have the latest draft that I redlined.
Are these additional red lines from since our meeting on the
don't-
23rd?
We've been through so many drafts, and I'm not sure I have the right one, so.
Okay, I think when we had our last meeting, Jonathan, if I recall correctly, we had a much rougher draft, and there was a lot of discussion about removing old language that was more that had originated from the mill overlay, and so there were, you know, more commercial industrial type uses, and we had a pretty robust
Yeah.
discussion about that at the last meeting. So this draft does take into consideration those changes that you had proposed previously.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, it does, all right.
There was the board had a discussion, you know, it took us a while to get there, but we ended up on the idea that, well, you know, we would like to see the existing uses continue if possible, or if that's what folks want to happen there. The athletic center, the arts center. So that's what item 1 does. So a purpose is to allow those things to continue even without the education use intact. Number 9 was, I wasn't sure this bylaw is actually doing, it's a nice thing. Nice thing.
So Chris,
Obviously a nice
if-
thing, but I don't think this bylaw does anything about that. So we should either buttress that or take that out.
if this were to pass, does item number 1 make those conforming then? to the
No,
district?
purpose statement of intent.
Okay,
So we'd have to make sure the text accomplishes the purpose.
yeah, okay, all right, okay.
I guess, Chris, too, the only thing that I still wonder about this, just in terms of purpose, is are we driving at keeping the campus as a campus and trying to limit the sort of parceling apart of the campus? I don't know that we're really touching upon that at all.
I don't think we should be.
You may
So I
have-
guess the question, like, I guess we need to think through if there are any unintended consequences of the parcels being utilizing this overlay as standalone parcels. I think we can think about that between now and the public hearing, but
Mhm.
that just occurs to me, like,
Would you-
we're basically,
Well, there are a lot of houses on that campus. And you want to keep those as part of the campus? Why can't they be sold as houses?
you think there's some operational issues that maybe are gonna preclude that? Maybe they're sold as condos? I don't know.
We don't.
Well,
know.
they could be sold as condos, they could be sold as homes.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the, like, utility and infrastructure situation is there.
Well,
You know,
we won't know.
because
we don't-
a campus interconnects those things, like, within its property boundaries. to
Right.
some degree or another. And we don't have a clear picture of what the degree of interconnectedness is. We understand there's some
Correct.
variation there, but I don't think subdividing it is super clean.
Well, I mean, it's 266 acres or something. And, you know, it's not a bad idea to create a subdivision if that's what it takes.
Sure.
We have to open this up to as many possible buyers as, you know, we can. I don't think our goal is to prevent development there.
I don't think it's to prevent, but I do think we have to be mindful of the transition areas along the perimeter, right?
Mindful of which way, Randy? I mean, we don't really know what the situation is there. I mean, they could sell all those things out individually if they're not connected to the rest of the campus.
But that's, I think, the unintended consequence we need to think about, right? So if you take the parcels on Hurlburt Road, for instance, right, probably easily sold off as separate units. The surrounding areas, agriculture and residential. Are we intensifying the potential uses in a way that's dramatically inconsistent with the agricultural residential nature? Just, you know, I want to see it all adaptively reused also, but I am mindful of abutters.
I see it as an opportunity because you already have a large institution that's been there for a very long time, coexisting with the community. So there is the potential there for there to be different types of uses that can coexist within that community that are not strictly just residential, which, as you all know, is the thing that we need to really start thinking seriously about. Because if we continue to really hammer down on these single-use districts, we're going to be duplicating and replicating the development patterns that have gotten us into environmental disaster, social incohesion, cultural decline, the whole thing. So I see this as an opportunity. And I don't know what an unintended consequence would be because there's so many possibilities that can happen, even with this overlay, because you still have the underlying district, right? So an unintended consequence would be that we get 50 acres of this parcel subdivided into 50 lots, and we have 50 new homes. I mean, that'll be super intense, right? But that's something that could happen. So how do we define in that intensity, and how do we define something that's not in concert with the rest of the community when what we've had here is again a large institution that's functioned, you know, be it a low impact institution like a college, but it still has its, you know, differences from the rest of the community there. So
So as to purpose number 9, to promote environmentally sustainable development, I agree with Chris, it is nice, but is it?
Unless we want to put some teeth in there to,
yeah, that's why I put something in there.
I'm not in favor of that.
I've got draft regulation for stuff like that that I can introduce.
I think I'm more inclined to remove it. There's already number 7, to preserve open space, protect sensitive habitat. There's already encourage preservation, reuse, and redevelopment of existing structures, which is a very sustainable development approach. I don't know that it's necessary. It seems redundant.
Well, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's not necessary unless we have some other language in here that defines what that is, which we
Chris, you
don't.
want to highlight that and potentially remove it?
Maybe you leave it in there for tonight and
Yeah.
that prompts you to discuss it further.
I mean, what if someone wanted to do a development that was completely powered by solar? You know, that's what 9 does.
You know, in 9, you know, part of this is there's a special permit involved in this, isn't there? So 9 also gives some teeth to the special permit to consider environmental.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
All right, so the location, I don't think we're changing anything there. Under 915.3 special permits.
So I've got a highlight here. If you remember at our last meeting, we had a discussion about how the overlay works,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I kept making the argument, or let's call it, I added to the discussion that somewhere in here it needs to be clear that this doesn't, and it is clear in here, but it's, I still feel strongly that somewhere in here, there needs to be an allusion to adopting this overlay, right? That people have that opportunity. And I thought maybe at the beginning of the second sentence in 953, there could just simply be language that says, if adopted, an applicant may apply for campus overlay district special permit.
Why do you have to say that?
Just to
Adopted in one-
give the notion, the idea that it's not something that is
It's not the
over-
first thing you have to
it's-
do for development. It's an additional thing.
right.
But if it's
Or,
not
or
adopted,
if,
if
or
it's
if
not
it's an
adopted,
opportunity.
if it's not adopted, it's not ever going to be a subject of discussion.
I think he
I
means,
don't
But
think he means
point,
bylaw
John,
adopted.
the point is just clarity when somebody's going through it to know
the
that this is
applicant
not
wants
what
to be
governs. This is an opportunity.
adopted in the means, you know, if the developer or the applicant wants to adopt it and use it.
I think that's where you're using the term adopt.
Exactly.
So here we say, this is an overlay district. All regulations pertaining to the underlying district
Shall
residential
continue to
district
be in
shall
full
continue.
force.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't know. You guys might tell me that it's not clear. For me,
I-
when I discuss overlays with people, clients, so forth, they don't understand what it means. And just giving them the notion that it's something that it's not a requirement.
It's optional.
It's an opt-in. Yeah, exactly. It's optional.
so
That's all
if I
yeah, go ahead.
could, so 954 is saying these things are permitted by right. Okay, so we don't need a special permit for these things. These things are prohibited, flat out. Here's the special permit section. So you can apply for a special permit for these things. I don't think this is needed. I think the text down here in number 4 is clear. These things are by right. These things are prohibited. These things
I
are by special
think we
permit.
need to specify the SPGA though, in that special
Right.
permit section.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's all that section needs to do, though, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris,
Yeah,
if
maybe.
that's your recommendation, that, you know, we don't have to call it special permit because we are already identifying things by right that would not require a special permit. They would only require site plan review, right?
Right. So it should be
Where required SPGA,
right. Oops, let me turn the red line on.
where except for permitted uses, SPGA will be.
Something like
Something
that.
like that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
But how will they know if they need a special permit?
It's
Because
in
these things are by
915.4.
right. These things are prohibited. These things are by special permit.
I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You okay with that, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that
And
better.
if you meet the dimensional standards, you're by right, or you can come to the SPGA to waive or reduce.
Mhm.
Actually, I think this works better now. That's a good point, Pedro. Thanks.
So in terms of permitted and prohibited uses, we had a very limited discussion about that last meeting. Were there any other items that board members felt were important to include as either permitted or prohibited?
I think that list you sent off to us today, we should actually take a look at that, because I think that's pretty comprehensive.
So I did receive a communication from Sarah Parker, who has been attending last couple of our meetings with just some suggested items. I did forward that to the board just a little bit before the meeting tonight. And we could either, consider it now, or we can incorporate it into the public comment when this refers back to us. I'm working off of my phone for that, Malcolm, so I don't have it to pull up for everybody.
I have it
Okay.
pulled up. Do you want me to read it out, or I don't,
Well, I mean,
guess
we can go down
Chris-
sorry, go ahead, Pedro, I'm sorry.
No, I guess Chris might have to put it up on screen for me
Okay,
to share it.
let me dive into my email. If I don't come out in 10 minutes, send help.
Okay.
5 and 6 seem to be repetitive there in that section.
In terms of what we are already showing, or in terms of the email?
What Chris was just showing. It
So what
talked
we
about,
have, oh, okay, community, educational, recreational uses and community centers.
yeah,
Okay, that's probably a fair point. We could probably
This
eliminate.
was what was showing. Where were you, Jonathan?
5 community, educational, or recreational uses, including museums, playgrounds, health clubs.
Oh,
And then 6 is community centers, including athletic centers, performing arts centers.
oh, yeah,
we can strike that one. I think.
a little overboard there. Okay, hold on. I'll be right back. Throw me a life.
He's back. He's back.
Oh, thankfully it's right up near the top.
Should be, I sent it like 20 minutes before the meeting. Should be the very top of your email pile.
I wish that was always. the
Yeah, I
case.
wonder how many emails he gets in 20 minutes.
Scary.
Plus the hour we've been sitting here already.
Was the idea with 6 that we just removed, was that community centers differentiating themselves from all of the individual things, meaning centers can include multiple activities in one building, whereas in the 5 seems to list individual uses for one building.
Maybe that's something we can correct next stage, whether in one or separate buildings or something like that. So on screen, you should be seeing what Brandy received today from a member of the public, and Brandy sent out to the board.
Yeah.
KAC, I presume, is Kilpatrick Athletic Center.
Yes.
So proposed permitted use of childcare center. Small ones are allowed by right already. Mixed use, I think we talked about that in the draft. Clubhouses or fraternal lodges are special permit currently. So do we know if these are proposed permitted by right? I assume so.
Proposed permitted, right?
I don't know if they, I think that would be up to us to decide which category.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a good use.
I'm more interested in the restricted uses, because I think that's really where we want to.
You mean
Is
the
there anything-
prohibited?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, given that we have 3 golfers on this board, we had to have some conversation here.
Yeah,
You may have to recuse yourself.
Not environmentally sensitive.
Exactly.
We don't need competition either.
Can you regulate where cemeteries go?
You can. It's a regulated use in the use table. Yes.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
think given proximity to the water quality protection overlay district, we probably don't want a cemetery.
I mean, the only one that I don't like is hotels. I mean, I think
Yeah. Well, is there a garage there now, or is it just open parking?
N-
Open.
There's not,
there's service garages.
there is a service garage,
Hmm.
but that's
Well,
more
then-
like a vehicle maintenance facility, a facilities maintenance
Okay.
facility.
That's not a garage, parking garage.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the hotels, I think, is something we may want to encourage, actually.
Well,
because
so I
the-
think
the
restricted and prohibited are two different things, right? So we've got our bylaw set up right now, permitted, prohibited, and special permit. So it may be that some on this list, again, we just wanted to have this for discussion, are prohibited and others may be special permit, right?
Yes, but I'm looking through the list, and I think most should be prohibited.
Except hotel. That would be the
Except
only one I
hotels.
would question.
Yeah,
We should add to prohibited things like gravel pits. I know that lumber yards are here, but logging activities, that kind of thing.
so are we just going to list them in the bylaw, or are we going to create an entry in the use table? for
Listed
these?
here in the bylaw text.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the key is to look at what is allowed or not in the underlying R2 and R4 zones,
Mhm.
because this property is split. Some is R4, some is R2, some is water quality zone 2, some is not. So some of these, like fuel station, obviously not compatible with a zone 2. Aviation field is by special permit in an R4 district. Probably
I would
not
make it
practical or
prohibited here.
desired here. Right.
Not
So
gonna happen here.
so those are the sorts of things that you should look at what the underlying zoning does or doesn't allow.
What
Seems
about
like
camp-
this
what
person
about-
has done a good job of referring.
What about
back.
camping facilities?
Yeah,
Camping
somebody want
is,
glamping.
I would say from my own perspective that with the exception of, and there is a second page if you keep scrolling, but with the exception of hotels and camping facilities, which I would put in the special permit category, I would be okay with the remainder of this list going under the prohibited uses.
Mhm. Yeah, I think this list here, this restricted, this reflects things that right now could possibly in the R2 or R4 be allowed by special permit, and so it's good to flag them, I think. I think that's where this is coming from, yeah. Well, the hotel is a no currently.
Which is why we had originally had a conversation about potentially having it be a special permit.
Mhm.
And Peter Moss, I see your hand raised. Just give us a couple of minutes and we'll get to you.
So, Brandy or
Yeah.
or somebody on the board, do you want to keep this particular screen in front of you on your computer?
I've got it on mine,
Call
yeah.
up the boards. Working draft again. And maybe we'll go through. So which do you want to start with?
I think it's easier to add to special permit. So we already have hotel.
Okay.
And the other one I'd suggest would be camping facilities.
Mhm.
Does anyone feel like anything in the restricted list should also be included as a special permit use? Hearing
Me.
none. Okay. And then, Chris, how fast can you type? Do you want to type in all these other ones? Do you have opportunity to just cut and paste?
Where are we looking?
The proposed restricted
just
uses,
the-
if you just copied all those bullets and pasted it in to prohibited and then deleted out camping facilities and hotels.
What about, does private garage or off-street parking? Off-street parking is just like a private off-street parking site, right? It's not off-street parking, which I assume all of these
Good point.
uses will have.
Yeah, that
Well,
is a good
or a
point.
lot
We'll
of
have to
the-
talk
or a
about
lot of
parking.
uses.
That's a good, let's
Yeah.
flag that one, Jeremy.
I wouldn't include off-street parking in that list. Private garage perhaps, but,
Yeah.
well,
But a garage might, a private garage, but a garage might be part of a use, right? Like a special permit use.
well, public garage is prohibited. That's in the prohibited list if we adopt this list.
Yeah.
Chris, the
But
remaining things, if it's easier to just type them.
I'm just not sure what a private garage is. Is that what I have in my property?
I would see it, I guess, yeah, maybe that's clunky language, so let's think about that.
But I think we should allow for
Why not-
Chris,
what I'm
it's-
thinking about a private garage being something that, for example, a business.
So either
Moves in.
private commercial garage, right?
Or a commercial garage. I mean, let's just say that there is a
Commercial.
business that moves in and they put in there, I don't know.
A valet service with a parking garage?
Something like that. I mean, I think,
Why don't you say commercial garage structure?
And you could actually
I
replace
don't know,
that.
maybe strike that whole thing.
Yeah.
What if there is a housing use that converts one of the dormitories, and because the current use is college students of a certain young age that don't drive, and now we've got residents that need cars to get to and from work, and they
Yeah.
want to put in a small parking deck, like, I don't want to prohibit that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Thanks, Brandy.
Sure.
And then if you construct things over parking in order to have a second use, be it agriculture or some sort of renewable energy, like does that become a garage? Depending on what it looks like.
Is this coming out, public garages?
No,
I
think
see
it's-
public
I think
garage
it's-
more as a standalone, like, commercial use
Yeah.
of its own, but we may not have that defined in our zoning, so we may have to look at that.
This is a parking garage? Is that what we mean?
It's the
Or-
private parking garage on the bottom.
Okay, I took that out, Jeremy.
So Chris, after incidental stripping of sod and removal of soil, there were, oh, did you get those other ones? You did. Okay, great, awesome. That looks good.
And
You actually
Pedro-
need that hotels in there, Chris, because you have it on A.
We have hotels as 3C under special permit.
It's
Yeah, we
already,
also have
it's
it on
already
A.
here.
Oh, I see, okay, it's duplicative, that's what you're saying.
Did Pedro had mentioned about logging? I mean, it's,
Lumberyard, you mean?
no, but logging, meaning going up there and cutting all those trees down. Which is different from a lumberyard.
I don't think
Lumberyard's
that's-
just where you store it, right?
Logging may be a protected use under agriculture.
Yeah,
standards,
I was
which,
gonna say the
Yeah.
same thing, is it,
48
it may
section
be
three.
ag.
Yeah,
And I can't see a property being designated as logging.
Mhm.
They might log a property, but that's not its use.
Right.
so what protections against that existed along Long Pond, along Long Pond?
Well, there's the water quality protection overlay, and then there are,
Scenic mountains.
Surface water.
and,
Yeah,
yeah.
but, and Long Pond, you can't do anything within 400 feet of the.
Oh, it's the
Of the-
This is a
400 feet.
drinking, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Surface
400
water
feet
source.
that prevents you from logging, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay, I see, there's someone in the public that has a a comment, a question about this, and this is probably about the time we would
Okay.
entertain such a thing. So
See
Chris,
one.
are you able to?
Yeah, Peter should be unmuted or able to unmute.
Hi, Peter, do you want to go ahead and make your comment?
Yes, please. The challenge here for the planning board is to make sure that Bard can sell this and that it will be a useful property and does not become the next DeSisto. We do not know what the future looks like or holds. So you should be careful in adding and restricting activities that may actually entice somebody to be a good owner of this property. So let me ask you, for the following reasons, I'd ask that you move some of these items from prohibited to special permit. Commercial amusement park. I don't know what your definition is, but perhaps that includes miniature golf or something else. Unless it's absolutely defined, it's poor to prohibit it here. Golf or country club? Well, golf I can understand. Country club might just be some people wanting to have a clubhouse there. So I would recommend that you have it as a special permit and not a prohibited use. Fast food eating establishments. There's a cafeteria at the property, and one of the considerations for the property is a food hall. I don't know what your definition of fast food eating is, but that might prohibit a food hall, which would be a use of the cafeteria. Public parking garages, one of the uses of this property might be additional housing and facilities for light industry. You may need to have a parking structure in order to enable economic development at the property. By prohibiting a garage, you might prohibit economic development. I don't know what your definition of fuel station is, but if that includes electric charging stations, that should be a special permit. I don't know your definition of aviation field, but you need to consider that in the future, there might be a need for drone activity. Those are my initial thoughts.
Thanks. We'll probably leave them in for now and take those under advisement and do some cross-checking while we're still in a draft form and continue to work on this draft while pushing this along to the process.
Is
I-
I mean, is there
I'd
any
just like to add, I think these are good comments and good ideas because we're trying to make the property as wide open as possible and use the special permit process to put some more structure around it. So I think those are good comments, actually.
Do we have definitions of any of those?
We do. I'm looking at them right
Yeah.
now. We
That's
have
what
quite
I'm
a few
wondering.
definitions. So
Yeah.
pretty open? That includes electric, I think. So it's a good comment. There's an electric station there already.
Yeah.
Chris, do you think we can get a determination from town council on how the state defines silviculture, which is the caring of forests? Because if we're doing, you just brought up the idea that that logging a forest might be protected. I don't think it is. I think silviculture is what the forest activity that the state doesn't restrict, and that's actually the evisceration of forests. It's not the taking care of or the development and care of forests.
So generally, silviculture and forest management includes cutting as well as planting, thinning. So you might do cutting of one species to encourage growth of a more commercially viable timber species. So definitely silviculture would include logging to some extent and sale of those
To
logs.
some extent, right? But there's,
Yep.
61B requires it.
Yeah.
And
So
it requires a licensed forester to do a plan.
pretty solidly in the exemption, I would say. But back to the comments from Mr. Most. Randy maybe wasn't sure. Malcolm. thought that the comments-
I'm okay with leaving it to discuss further at a public hearing, but I do think these are items that should be considered.
I think I had said previously, if the board's all right with it, I'd like to leave it. I think we have the opportunity to move things down to special permit or move them up to allowable, but I'd like to take some public comment on it. The
Yeah.
select board may have some thoughts as well.
Do we also want to look at all those definitions that we do have for those? And
We'll look
see
at
if
that
they're-
in parallel. I mean, some of them,
Yeah.
you know, like
Are
Jeremy,
they all-
like
Fast food is what I was wondering how
we do
that's
have a
defined.
definition for that.
Yeah.
We have a definition, it's in our use table. So, I mean, as long as it's in our use table, I think we can say that.
The only thing that I don't see a definition for really is the parking garage. We have parking spot in there, but nothing that defines what a garage is.
That's because we have so many of them.
I mean,
I think the idea with the garage is to not have like a public garage that people can pay to park their car in.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see it as a
anywhere in
standalone
town.
commercial enterprise.
If it's
Right.
It's in our use-
accessory to one of the uses
It's in our use table.
on the property, I think it, you know, public parking garages could be acceptable.
Right. The
Public-
use table is
public-
about primary uses.
A public garage is defined and it is in our use table.
It's defined. I didn't see it in the definitions.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Public and private garage are defined.
Where?
Page
Oh,
144.
garage, private, garage, public.
Definition.
Oh, under garage.
Garage public, any garage other than
Got
a
it.
private garage available to the public, operated for gain, and which is used for long-term, more than 24-hour storage or repair of motor vehicles.
No,
Garage private, a garage not available to the public, used for storage purposes only, and in which no business, service, or industry connected directly or indirectly with motor vehicles is conducted. So I think private garage would go to Jeremy's point about housing, or maybe it was Peter's point about housing and vehicles. Peter, do you have an additional question, or is your hand just raised?
I do. It's a comment. Since you are going to ask for public comment in the future, by leaving these items, which I think are defective in the prohibited section, it's going to be a presumption of people having to argue why they should become special permit items. If you move some of these that might not meet definitions into the special permit section now, somebody in the future would have to argue why it should be prohibited. My point is one of burden. I think that it would behoove the conversation to move some of the items that have been identified to the special permit section from the prohibited section.
but
Okay, thank
so,
you.
so Peter, with the public garage, so we had previously removed the private garage from the list of restricted uses and just left the public garage. And there, did you hear that discussion of the difference of how they're defined in the zoning bylaw?
Would you mind going over that one more time, please?
Do you want to do it, Brandy, or do you want me to read it?
I'm not sure what Peter's question is, if it's about what you framed or the issue at large about us
There's-
removing.
They're defined, the definitions, is that what you wanted?
Yeah, because I think what he was talking about was a public garage and not a private garage. So the public garage would be like if you have some use on one of the parcels that requires parking, then that's a private, excuse me, that's a
Private garage.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so yeah, that's a private garage.
Public garage would still be prohibited.
I'm sorry,
Because a public
I
garage
reversed
is
it,
a
sorry.
for-profit place where you bring your car to leave it and or get repairs to your car. We don't want
Yeah.
that. It's not permitted. It wouldn't be permitted in the water quality protection overlay. It's not permitted. So we would leave that in prohibited.
May I ask you a question, Brandy? I apologize if I
Yeah,
know my hand's
yes,
not
but
raised.
then you're gonna have to be quiet
I'll be-
because we're gonna have to go through this.
I promise. Hypothetically, there's a village. Think of the core of the campus as a village where people want to drive to the campus because there's no public transportation otherwise available. They want to park their car and they want to use the facilities in the village. They want to be able to go to work. They want to be able to play. They want to be able to eat. And
They
it
can
may
use a
well
pri-
be
they
to
can use a
facilitate,
private garage.
That's a private garage, yeah.
Yeah.
all of
They can
those are
use it.
private purposes. Then I'll
Correct.
be
Yes.
quiet. Thank you for
Yeah.
entertaining my question.
No problem. All right, it's up to the board in terms of what we move, but let's go through them individually. So cemeteries, prohibited or special permit?
Prohibited.
Commercial amusements, let's look at the definition there. I've got it up here. Commercial amusement, buildings, structures, and premises for indoor and or outdoor recreation, including but not limited to fairgrounds for fairs, animal racing, circuses, and similar exhibitions.
Log rolling, axe throwing, arcades.
Um,
Again, it's for this stage, it's as Mr. Most said, it's sort of about burden. Do you want to keep it solidly prohibited, or do you want to think if you moved it into special permit, you'd have more of a conversation?
I'm okay with moving it.
I would move it.
That's two of you.
Yeah, so do we have a
That's
third?
only two. I need a third.
Well, somebody nod.
It
No, you have
doesn't,
to
it doesn't hurt to move it for a special permit. We're not gonna see anybody do this anyway.
Next, golf.
Golf or country club, I think it's fine to leave it in prohibited because we already have a provision that allows for clubs, social clubs, clubhouse or fraternal lodge.
Right.
House of paternal lodges.
They're allowed by special permit
Right.
zone. Yeah.
Fast food eating establishment is an interesting point. It's defined as a type of restaurant with or without a drive-up window for serving customers in motor vehicles, which has as its principal business the sale of pre-prepared or quickly prepared food or drink, often using disposable containers or wrappers for consumption either on or off premises.
Yeah,
I think-
with that definition, I don't know if we should limit it.
But it's the drive up
Why?
referring to motor
It
vehicles.
says
not
with
the
or
entire-
without a drive-up.
With or
With
without
or
a drive
without.
up for motor vehicles. The entire restaurant is not necessarily oriented to motor vehicles, just the drive up.
Yeah.
I think the way it was read, it was
Oh, I see.
reading the whole thing was related to motor vehicles.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
know,
I think what people are
Does the
I think-
like,
use,
It
We
doesn't say
changed the
eating
definition.
establishment. It doesn't
That's a
say
terrible
eating
definition.
establishment.
well, we're not gonna change the definition. We're dealing with the definition we've got, so that's not a helpful comment. Does anybody know offhand if a restaurant is already a permitted use in the table of uses? I don't have that up because I've got all the definitions up.
No, it would be prohibited most likely. Let's
Well,
see.
there's special permits if it's prohibited. I mean, if it's, no, it's not. It's
Fast
not
food is
allowed.
not-
do you think you could just turn off the stove and, oops, sorry.
What
No,
is-
Jeremy, we cannot.
I don't have it in my list of uses, so I don't think restaurants are.
So
Currently, it's not allowed. Yeah.
So do we want, there is food service on campus already. I assume we want to allow that type of food service to continue.
is a
in some
place
way,
like Panera, is a place like Panera Bread fast food eating establishment?
Yes, according
Oh.
to this definition, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so
Currently,
too.
this
So
is-
That's why it's a terrible definition.
This is prohibited in the underlying districts, so it's
yeah,
redundant.
and
here. You wanna
I
move
think it should
to-
be by special
But it's a,
permit.
I mean, you could say a lot of mom and pop places, restaurants could be fast food too,
All of
depending
them.
on.
Anything that has
Yeah.
prepared food is a fast food restaurant. Put it in
We're
special
not
permit.
gonna
Don't.
change the definition though.
Yeah.
If
So I
we're
think
gonna,
we could-
if we're gonna
But it-
strike this, that's fine. It's fine. And Chris
No, no,
just
but-
said that it's already prohibited in the underlying, so we don't need to duplicatively have it listed here.
But it's,
The question
it's
is-
not
It
a,
should be
it-
special
it's not
permit.
the same as a restaurant, though.
See, a restaurant, the
We could
main,
we could allow a restaurant, but prohibit fast food.
the
establishment.
thing that
No,
a
but
restaurant
that's-
definition doesn't include is the takeaway piece. So like takeaway is not a main function of a restaurant,
Correct.
because it's not listed in the definition, even though, almost every restaurant does take away, and like, some during the pandemic became fast food restaurants or fast food establishments because they had no dining.
So I think we're missing the point right now. So this is about, do we want a use related to food service allowed on the campus? Perhaps we actually want it allowed.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
So
I do want it allowed.
let's strike it
But-
here.
And especially
not-
if it's going to be a big campus, you want to have takeaway food, right?
Yeah.
You guys are killing me.
You want to add restaurant?
We want to add it to permitted. So we already say bakers and or artisan food or beverage producers. Do we want to include restaurants?
I want a taco stand.
Whatever it is, I want it in special permit.
Leave it in special
Do you
permit?
want fast food accepting those with drive-throughs? Because we could do that also.
Well, if it's in special permit, then they have to get a special permit and we could prohibit drive-throughs.
Yeah, but that's not good policy because we have limits to our service time here.
Okay, let's keep going or we'll be here all night. So public parking garages, I think we're fine with that. Lumber yards, is anyone objecting to leaving that as prohibited?
Nope.
Large scale commercial development.
No.
Let's see, do we need a definition there? Or are we all scale commercial?
Basically malls. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
20,
Retail stores or centers,
Over 10,000 square feet.
total
over
aggregate
20.
over 20,000
Over-
square
over
feet
20,000
and less
square
than
feet.
50,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to leave that as prohibited. Motor
Yeah.
vehicle fuel station, motor vehicle fuel station says premises for supplying fuel, oil, lubrication, washing, or minor repair services, including sales of packaged and prepared food,
What?
but not including body work, painting, or major repairs.
Let's
It
see.
doesn't include charging station.
It doesn't, but nothing in our code includes charging stations.
Well, the question is, what is fuel?
Electricity is
L-
fuel nowadays.
It
This is,
is.
they were talking
but
about this as a
is-
standalone use.
It's a coffee shop.
Talking about this as a standalone use.
I think as a standalone use, it's prohibited.
So because a charging station, electric vehicle charging station is an accessory use.
Likely, I mean, right now, there's one there and it's an accessory to the parking lot itself, so.
Because even
Accessory
the
to
big
the house.
ones, even the big ones that, you know, I mean, when does it become a primary use? Like the bigger ones at the
Big Y
at the
is an accessory.
supermarkets, yeah. I mean,
accessory.
those are accessory, right?
Those are
Yes.
accessory.
They're
The only
absolutely
place I've
accessory.
ever seen is that there are a few traditional fuel providers, petroleum fuel providers that have, as a part of their model, added EV charging as one of the fueling options with their
Yeah.
convenience
But
store fuel station. So
but all we're restricting is like a business, like a commercial business that is just charging your
Standalone.
vehicle,
correct.
you know, and whatever else they're doing. Not you have a business and you want to let people charge their cars. Or you have housing and you want to let people charge their cars or whatever.
I would leave it in as prohibited right now.
Prohibited, yeah.
Yeah,
Motor vehicle sales rooms,
no
that's.
problem.
We
Leave
want
it.
that prohibited. Aviation fields, we don't have a definition for that, but I would leave it in prohibited.
I mean, does what we have now prohibit drone activity? Because that was Peter's comment. And
Again, our code does
Yeah.
not, that's like a modern thing. We've not updated our code
Yeah.
to talk about drones. So
so I don't, and everybody's already operating them. So
And
unless,
you do it out of your house. You don't need an aviation field to do it.
yeah,
So I
freight
don't think
terminals.
Good.
Let's see, freight terminals are defined. Freight terminals are not defined. I don't see this as a transportation hub though, so I think that's safely in the prohibited.
It's already prohibited, so I don't think you need it here.
Okay, so you
Okay.
can strike it. Is sawmill already prohibited?
Um,
The definition is weird.
is
This is
already-
like
it
making
is
me think we
already
need to clean
prohibited.
this up. Okay, so
Yep.
we'll strike that one. Gravel, loam, sand, stone removal.
Could be by special permit currently.
Yep. But prohibited.
I'd leave it as prohibited.
Okay.
It's also
Contractor
Water Quality Protection District.
Yeah, but
prohibited.
up top is
Yeah.
perfect for a freaking gravel pit.
Yeah.
Contractors' landscapers yards are currently prohibited.
Okay.
I should make, you should make that by special permit or something.
Yeah, these,
I,
you know,
I,
could
I
be-
actually agree with Jonathan on that one, potentially making
it
that
could be
special permit.
defined rather loosely. I mean, you have a new industry and they need to park their 10 service trucks there.
Well, I am thinking
Contractors'
about,
yards,
there
so-
is essentially that use already on the campus. So with the facilities building, you know,
True.
they have a metal pole barn and they've got
Yeah.
their sand and salt and their mowers and
There was somebody inquired about the old Eagleton School, thinking that it would be great for their contractor's yard. And currently that would not have been allowed, so they went away. So it's in the realm of possibility that somebody could ask. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we allow one on Mahawi Street,
okay.
Incidental, I mean, that's fairly straightforward, incidental. It's, I mean, if you've got to build a building, you're gonna strip the sod.
Yeah, it can't be prohibited.
I don't think it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's not-
is that
it's not a
is
primary
that
use
necessarily a use? That's
Yeah, it's not a
something that's incidental to construction.
Yeah, I think it's just incidental. I'm gonna remove it if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Better list? Yes?
Yep, and we'll
All right.
review it.
Great. And then did anyone have any comments on dimensional standards?
I would just suggest that we remove Peter's talking privileges because looks like he still has them. Just in
We
case
can
he
only
feels
speak at the pleasure of the
Yeah.
chair, so.
Yeah, I'm vice chair. I can make the recommendation. I
Um,
just made a suggestion.
By the way, Peter, thanks, and whoever
Yes.
sent that list, thanks.
Good. Okay, that's good discussion. So if we don't have any changes to 9:15.5, then the
Okay.
last section is 9:15.6.
Wait, I have got questions on 9:15.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I asked and nobody answered.
So number 2 there, I don't know really how to think about it, given the current structure of the lots there.
Mm-hmm.
So can somebody walk me through this so I can understand that a little better? Because the current structure right now doesn't, there are a couple of, I'm going to call them projects, or a couple of building clusters or buildings themselves that are actually on property lines. So I don't know.
Given-
I think, Brandy, we've discussed this before, but I'm not really sure how to think about
Given
setbacks there
the,
currently.
this is also
So
only
is
for
this for new
non-residential.
but would it be also only for new construction?
Okay,
Because-
if that's the case, then
But I agree, it doesn't state that.
No, but it says for setbacks for non-residential uses.
Understood, but like.
But
take-
there's existing, yeah, non-residential uses, right?
yeah, and there are existing, student union. I'm not sure that the cafeteria is, but the buildings in the back, the libraries, all those buildings are within setbacks. So it's just weird. It's just a weird thing. Maybe it is just for new.
Isn't this
Well,
what we did on State Road, where we said, we have a minimum setback, but if the buildings on either side are, closer, then
Well,
we did that
let-
in Houston.
Yeah, let's just read this and think about what we're really trying to say here. So this is setbacks for non-residential uses shall be lesser of the minimum setbacks required in the underlying district or the average setback between two buildings that predate the zoning. So Malcolm, to your point, that's That's the sort of like maintaining the continuity, right, of a
Yeah.
particular area.
The next clause, I'm not sure of though.
And
I
are
don't
either
thi-
currently occupied or shall be reoccupied as part of a coordinated development permit under this section. And shall
I don't
Right.
think I don't think any buildings on the campus, except maybe the president's house or Kellogg Hall or something, actually predate zoning.
Well, the Kellogg Center does, but I don't think it was there when zoning was
No,
enacted.
But
it's,
this says
no,
this
it's
zoning
predate this
bylaw.
zoning bylaw, which
This zoning bylaw.
doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, it doesn't have to predate zoning.
Well, that's,
It's-
Jonathan's correct. That's not what this says. This is implying the entire.
The entire, it's
150
capital zoning
page
bylaw.
document. So if
Was
you
it-
want this.
Was that the
section-
intent though?
This section.
Okay.
Yeah. Or was that the intent? Yeah, I guess.
Why have a condition like that? Why don't we just say two adjacent buildings?
Existing building.
Well, let's think about what are we trying to achieve here though? So first, we know that there are existing buildings that do not meet the underlying district. Those are going to be able to be replaced in their footprint, right? I think we're talking about new structures here and having some continuity in terms of how they're positioned in relationship to other buildings with the way the road network is. And you know, and if we look at the parcel lines as they are right this minute, it may not be possible to meet the setbacks of the underlying district. Right? Is that your point, Pedro?
Yeah, I mean, it's just really confusing for me.
Do we, well, yeah, the question is, do we need this? Sounds like we need something.
I think when you said this is for new, then that to me, okay, this makes sense then.
Yeah.
It
But
also
for the
says
way the
no-
place is laid out now, it doesn't make any, it doesn't, I just don't know how to think about it.
Chris, I do think this is a holdover from the mills.
Yeah, I'm looking at the mill district. It is. Yeah.
And I think we have a different challenge on the campus.
Okay.
I like,
yeah.
I like existing buildings shall be situated on pedestrian amenities.
What?
See that, it was,
What-
I was going to suggest we strike number 3 because
What if you have something that you can't, like change the pedestrian amenities to
Well,
meet the entrance?
not only that, some pedestrian amenities are in shaded areas, north facing,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
in line with preliminary winds. I mean, a good architect will make an argument that a lot of the way the current buildings are oriented is not doesn't make for great entrances. Anyway, to me, it's like a design standard that I don't like.
Can we finish with number 2?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I agree.
I would suggest with number 2, we strike everything except the last sentence.
Yeah.
Again, for new construction though? For new construction?
Okay. SPGA, for new construction, the SPGA may reduce front, side, and rear setbacks to as low as 0 as part of a special permit. Which means that without a special permit, they still have to, they
I'm
still
okay
have to
with that.
abide.
That simplifies.
but you'd have to, yeah, you'd have to have a strong argument for, right? I mean, it could just easily make sense and then,
Buildings on either side or have 0 setback.
yeah, but if it doesn't make sense, then
Yeah,
it
because they're
gets
gonna be
denied,
hemmed
right?
in by parcel configuration as it exists currently, or they're gonna have to make lot line adjustments. I'm okay with that approach, Malcolm, but I do think we should call number 2 having something, we probably can strike setbacks for non-residential uses and just leave it
yeah.
as, right?
Right.
All right,
For new
Chris, I would strike everything. Oh, you want to leave it as setbacks as the
So-
subheading?
Um,
Yeah.
the setbacks in the underlying zones for R2 and R4 are 50-foot front yards, 20-foot side yards, and 30-foot rear yards, with 150 and 200-foot widths. You know, so if you require everything by right to be set back 50 feet from the front,
So you need the new building clause in that, right?
Hold on,
So it doesn't
Chris, can you
require a
finish?
special
Can
permit.
you
Yeah.
finish, Chris?
Jeremy, hang on.
I guess I was just working it out.
I think, listen, the
yeah.
issue is that there are buildings right now that saddle property lines,
Correct.
Straddle.
right?
Or are closer to property
Straddle, yeah.
lines than the existing setback would require. So the existing setback is 20
Right.
foot. There's plenty of buildings that are closer than.
Well,
So if
unless
there
we
is no, if there's no
Yes.
Form A of the property, then we have all these buildings there that are non-conforming, right? Just dimensionally.
Yeah.
So, and some of the lots are huge. So if you want to, add on to, there's like, I'm thinking of this one housing cluster. If you want to add on to that housing cluster, you have to do it 50 feet away from the current housing cluster.
Right.
That could, to me, that's a little problematic.
Yeah,
So
but unless we establish setbacks for the overlay district,
Yeah.
which I don't know that we are in a position to do, then
I don't think we can.
Yeah, then all we can do is allow special permit or allow some override. If it's not special permit, what is it?
So do you just want to add the new for new construction piece?
I think we still want to strike the first sentence in that clause.
I think you're right,
Mhm.
Brandy and Malcolm. I think this is clearest.
Yeah. And
And
that,
for now, it at least
and
allows somebody
and
who's, to
it
come.
also applies to existing buildings too,
Right.
which we want.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
All right.
I think that's a good way to go for this draft. Now down to this, did you want something about moving existing buildings? Is that you?
Do we need this clause at all? Let's discuss. Primary entrances to proposed and existing buildings shall be situated on pedestrian amenities, sidewalks, plazas, open space, and have a minimum width of 5 feet.
You can leave the 5 feet in there, but the rest of it to me is not good. It could lead to some really bad results.
Isn't the 5 feet already something that's in building code? It's an
No.
ADA requirement.
You need, no,
You need,
No.
I guess you need,
4 feet or 3 feet.
yeah.
to get through a doorway, you need 32 clear. That's it.
It's not something that we should do in zoning.
Good, thank
Yeah.
you.
Bullet.
It's in the building code and
So we'll take that one out.
It's in the design schools too. All right, good. That's it for me. Thank you.
Isn't
don't go home yet.
Hold on, Malcolm, go ahead.
the next one also? I mean, isn't it this another one of these goes without saying?
Yeah.
Because they have, new construction needs. Well, we have loading as part of site plan review and emergency access as part of site plan review.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
probably redundant then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think those were holdovers from the mill district too.
All right, hit save on that version.
Save.
All right, any more comments, board members, on the draft overlay?
We keep going.
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Do you want to add more sections?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. So if there are no more comments, we have a motion to refer this bylaw to the select board for consideration.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have a second from Malcolm. Any further discussion on this board? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Jonathan,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Pedro,
Aye.
Brandy, aye. All right. Excellent. We got 3 for 3 there. Thank you, guys. Item number 6 on our agenda is the property maintenance bylaw. Review and discuss maintenance of vacant commercial buildings bylaw referred from select board for consideration. Chris, I know Mr. Most is here just to provide some context as he's the citizen sponsor of the proposed bylaw. Can you just explain for us and those who are attending tonight, this is a proposed town law, right?
Code.
That's,
bylaw.
yeah, that's what it appears to be. It would be, its proper place would be in the town code, not in the zoning code. So, like other, regulatory powers, short-term rentals, leash laws, etc., this would apply to everyone everywhere, except as the bylaw defines, there's no such thing as grandfathering and those sorts of vested rights that come with zoning. Yeah, and unlike zoning that requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting, general bylaws require simple majority vote. That helps.
Okay, great. And then just in terms of the select board, I did not get a chance to talk to Steve Bannon about whether just kind of like what the select board's take was on it. Did they
No, there's no take.
they
just
have no okay, so they
haven't
just wanted
discussed it.
to get our opinion on it?
Before they discussed it. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I referred it to staff as well.
Okay, great. And when do they intend to have this back on their agenda?
Not sure.
Okay, all right. So Mr. Most, do you want to give us a little bit of context?
Has Pedro turned my microphone off?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Just as the planning board has just been doing, I'm a member of a group that has been considering the implications of Simon's Rock's closing in August, and in particular, preservation of the 47 structures on the property. BART has stated it wants to conduct an expedited sale process. I have every reason to believe that BART will maintain the property until sold. Obviously, BART doesn't want to jeopardize the property's value. BART has been a wonderful custodian of the property and a very good community member. The town does not know who the next owner will be and does not know if the next owner will be as good a citizen as BART has been. In that vein, I'd ask you to consider the Searle School. I had the opportunity to tour the Searle School in 2023. To be kind, I will understate that it was a troubled property where there were questionable activities for a long period. The property owner fortunately resolved the life safety issues voluntarily in 2024, but the town did not have a tool to force Searles to be secured and maintained. So for life
Peter,
safety,
Peter, it was like that when the town owned it.
So
Maybe that's
Jonathan,
dated.
let's let
So-
Peter finish and then you can make your comments.
So for life safety reasons, I believe the town needs a tool, a bylaw with teeth to make sure that property owners do not permit vacant commercial structures to become the next Searle School. We've observed Lanesboro has had a heck of a time enforcing security and maintenance at the former Berkshire Mall. It does not have a commercial structure building regulation. With all of that in mind, I researched Massachusetts municipalities with a mechanism to secure vacant commercial structures for life safety purposes. The bylaw presented here is adapted from the towns of Hull and Longmeadow, and I'll just point out a few of its key provisions. Once vacant, the property owner is required to register the property with the planning department and building department on an agreed form. It requires commercial property owners to pay an annual registration fee to the town to mitigate the administrative cost of monitoring and securing the maintenance of the property. The form requires the owner's contact information. Once the vacant building becomes occupied, the town is then notified. The building department will advise the police, fire, and health departments of vacant buildings, as they may have a greater concern for the misuse of the property. As I understand it from speaking with Mr. Bannon, the select board is considering the enforcement mechanism in consultation with the building inspector and the police and fire departments. The expectation is, at least mine, that the building inspector will be advised by concerned neighbors or maybe patrol officers of concerns regarding vacant structures, and the building inspector would contact the property owner, but that mechanism is still being worked out. The bylaw requires that the property owner repair broken windows, broken doors, and other openings within 30 days to make sure that the property is secure. One, of course, would hope that property owners would voluntarily comply. Keeping a property safe and secure is in the property's owner's interest as well. But the proposed regulation includes escalating fines for failure to comply. Escalating fines are critical. Regulations without teeth are not useful. If the property owner refuses to comply and it is determined that the building remains unsafe, the building department under this bylaw would be authorized to make necessary repairs and seek reimbursement from the property owner.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I just want to ask board members if they've got any questions for Peter that you'd like to ask. Jonathan, do you have anything?
Yeah, because this was drafted, I think it's not a bad idea. And it was drafted with Simon's Rock in mind, obviously. But what are you gonna do with Monument Mills? And, first of all, I think this places a huge burden on town employees to monitor all this. I think the costs can be extraordinary for the building owners or, someone trying to rent an empty storefront. I think that the, some of this applies to the bistro box because it's closed for a period of more than 90 days. It applies to the fairgrounds. I don't, replacing a window in 30 days is not possible, Peter. It takes, 6 months to get a window now. And so, some of this is just not practical.
So, may I respond to Jonathan, not Brandy?
Yeah, if you can do it in a limited fashion. I don't want this isn't a forum for a debate. I'd rather have folks ask questions and seek clarification. So I guess if you can do it in a reasonably efficient manner.
I believe, Jonathan, that a building that is intended to be vacant, such as is excluded, such as Bistro Box, it doesn't require a replacement of a window, of a glass window. What it requires is securing the space. So just as Searles has done, it's put a board over the window. What the bylaws intend is to prevent the misuse of a property, of a vacant commercial structure. And you're concerned about the cost. There's a cost once a building becomes vacant of registering the building, but there's no additional cost as long as the building is maintained.
All right, well, Jonathan's thinking,
I
hold-
I have.
I'm going to everybody.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Hang on. Malcolm is next on my screen, so I just want to ask Malcolm if he's.
I'm concerned about the applicability to existing vacant buildings. The fairgrounds, obviously, I don't know what you would do with the fairgrounds, Searle School, the Monument Mills. But I'm also, I'm a little confused by the answer about the windows, because I thought my reading of the bylaws said explicitly prohibited the boarding up of windows and doors, except on an emergency basis and a limited basis. So, I'm more concerned about the fairgrounds and Searle School and Monument Mills, frankly. I think it's a good bylaw, and maybe it's something we need, but right now, I think if we pass it as a general bylaw, it's gonna be a real burden.
Jeremy?
That
So
wasn't a
I-
question.
I mean, I do have a question with, like differentiating between, a vacant property and a vacant building. So you could have a property that's not vacant, but does this still apply if you have a building on the commercial property that is vacant?
Wait, I don't understand the distinction.
So let's say you have some property where you have a barn in the back. It's a commercial property, like the historical societies there, right? And so you
Sure.
have an unsecured building on the property, but the property itself is occupied, right? And so do you have to secure that unoccupied building, even though you have people on the property on, regularly?
Good question.
Would you like me to address that?
Do you want to?
Well, yes, and the answer is occupying the property isn't the issue. It's whether or not there are vacant commercial buildings that could be misused for improper purposes. And so if you have a commercial structure in front and a building in back that's unsecured, it needs to be secured. And all that takes is either boarding the windows or locking the doors, making sure that it can't be misused. And to answer your question, Malcolm, the fairground, this refers to buildings, much of the fairgrounds, like the grandstands, that isn't applicable. This is not an applicable bylaw to the grandstands.
Why
Why not? Why not?
Because it's
Yeah.
not, because the bylaw intends for structures that have been closed that are now vacant and not closed to be secured.
Storage of animals though, and
I think, we're not solving the issues here. We're just sort of raising issues for Peter's consideration. So this is like input on this. So I think that's probably one thing that needs to be looked at is what other properties throughout the town might get caught up in this.
How
And-
about Reed's Cleaners and Cook's Garage and
Yeah,
if
there's a lot who's
if
on
you
it.
look around, some of the worst properties in town are town owned or historically have been town owned.
These regulations don't apply to any town owned or controlled building because the town by law can't fine itself.
I understand, but the town you're not correcting some of the problem then.
Well,
Yes.
vacant properties are a burden on the town, but we're focusing on buildings that the town doesn't own.
You might be hearing, Peter, that this board may have an opinion that even if the town owns it, they should be properly secured so they do not become attractive nuisances.
I understand that, but it's just as a
Sure.
matter of law that no bylaw, the town can't fine itself.
Understood.
I-
Pedro? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy, did you have more?
Well, I just wonder if it makes it really onerous to sell, properties that have been commercial properties that have been neglected, because then once they're transferred over or before they're transferred over, I mean, what happens? I mean, but definitely for sale of them, it just ends up, these all become town properties eventually, if there's no money to maintain them.
I don't know about
Because
that, but-
is it difficult for a new owner to have to come in and secure everything like day 7, or day whatever?
Maybe in their interests, right? As Peter said, I think it's in the owner's interest to maintain an unoccupied building so that it doesn't deteriorate further, right? Because a building that deteriorates further is just harder to transfer to someone else. We end up in a situation where if the roof goes, then the interior goes, and it's just a tear down. And then we haven't done anything for our environmental objectives of adaptive reuse of buildings.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to contribute to more tear downs. Like, you know, all of these town-owned properties that the town tries to get rid of, is it just going to be easier to tear them down than to go through the hassle?
Right, I think we have to take the bylaw sponsor at his word, though, that he's not focused on town properties, so.
Well, but I think that's how it would apply to town properties, right? If the town isn't thinking that all the town-owned properties are going to be maintained as town-owned properties, then I think you have to consider that.
Pedro, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'm not really understanding these comments here about this being a burden on who. I don't know who you're referring to. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, buildings like Houstonic Mills and Searle School, they're a burden on all of us. Buildings are empty. They're not generating the tax revenue that they could be generating. Searle School for a long time was used as a clubhouse for teenagers. I mean, if a person purchases a piece of property, they don't develop it, they don't secure it or take care of it, you know, what we've been doing is just letting it sit there. I think this might be some impetus to get a building owner to either move the property or to develop it. Can somebody, John or Malcolm, can you explain what you mean as this being a burden?
You think it's not a burden?
I don't understand what burden you're referring to.
Well, I mean, the fairgrounds, for example, I mean, are the owners in a position to, you know, to secure the, and I disagree. I mean, according to my reading of the definition here, the fairgrounds is a commercial structure. But you know, I mean, if that's not a burden to, you know, to, even the $300 registration fee is a burden, but that's not what I meant.
But then it's $300 a day.
Yeah.
It gets pretty expensive pretty fast.
Well, in my opinion, the fairgrounds, the way it's been as long as I've lived in this town, other than when the farmers market there, is an eyesore. It served a
Yeah,
great purpose during the fires, but it's land that could be, I mean, imagine that being something different, public park. Well,
Dog park.
we always discuss or something else. But as it is, it's just sitting there deteriorating year after year. And, you know, I'm sorry if the owners don't have the means to do anything with it. Well, maybe they shouldn't own it.
So, Peter, one other thing. You seem to be discriminating against Housatonic because it says none of the required addresses shall be a post office box. No one in Housatonic has mail delivery.
And it may be the mailing address of the owner could be a post office box. I mean,
Yeah. Well, it's in here
The,
in the registration.
So I researched that. The reason is that if this had to go to litigation, you can't serve a post office box. You need to be able to serve the person where they live. So it actually is calling for an address. So if there's an enforcement, you
I
can
see.
serve the person, the owner, who is then going to have to either repair or pay the fines if the building department had to do it.
I think the part in here is just requiring the mailing address to not be a post office box, because you still are requiring an address, right? And so in that case, you're not going to serve them, right? You're going to serve them in person anyway. And so you just need the address.
well, you
Right.
need a physical address to serve them.
Yeah.
But
And so
not the
that the
building.
mailing
It
address,
can't be the building.
that the mailing address has to be a non-PO box. That seems like, what is the reason for that?
Well-
maybe this, I can wordsmith this, but you need a physical address where the owner lives so that the owner can be served with papers in order to enforce the bylaw.
Yeah, but I thought you were asking for both the physical address and a mailing address in this,
I love you guys. We are so deep in the weeds.
Yeah, no, this is
So,
wordsmithing.
and that's not what we're doing here. This isn't, we don't own this proposed bylaw. I think in general, it would be useful for us to focus our discussion on whether or not we think we would be in a position to make any kind of recommendation, positive affirmation, negative affirmation back to the select board for their further consideration. I know I, for one, have personally looked around at some of our vacant commercial buildings, regardless of ownership, and thought, geez, that's becoming an attractive nuisance. I would love it if owners just always had the means to keep things secure. I am a little, but I recognize that's not always the case. I don't know to what extent the building department already communicates with owners, where perhaps the police have said there's an attractive nuisance that's been created. We're catching vandals in this space, or other, inappropriate behaviors happening in a space. So I'm not aware of that.
I don't really see this as a building inspector issue. I see this as a public safety issue. So it should be
It's
police issue.
multifaceted though, isn't it? Because the way this is structured is that in terms of burden, I think it puts a burden on the building department to try and track and communicate with owners about how they should be maintaining their property. I don't know that our department has that bandwidth. Not that I don't think that it's a good idea to keep all their properties in good order. I just don't know if they've got the bandwidth for it. So I would say for myself, in high level concept, I'm supportive of this, but I think there's a lot of devil in the details that needs to get worked out.
yeah, and I worry because it's code, so it's day one, right? It's like this affects everyone day one that it becomes part of the code.
Right.
And yeah,
Does
I
the
mean,
A- Does the
I
AG
don't
review town code? Chris?
You're muted, Chris.
What's that?
Does the AG review town bylaws?
Yes.
Not zoning. Town bylaws as well?
Yes, all bylaws.
Okay. And I'm concerned about if a building owner has an empty storefront, that's a huge burden. And then are we just increasing that burden through these regulations?
Am I not mistaken that this is a 6-month period, not a 30-day period, Peter?
I think it's 90 days.
90 days. But Jonathan,
Yeah.
having a vacant storefront isn't the issue. Having a vacant storefront that can be that has broken windows, that can be misused and is unsafe. This is a life safety issue. A vacant storefront is fine. It's only not fine when there's a misuse of the property. And you want to encourage the property owner to make sure there's no misuse.
But doesn't this deal with what they have to do with the windows and the empty storefront and everything?
Yeah, it doesn't. There are windows in your hypothetical vacant storefront. If the window is reed cleaners is fine, but if somebody took the door to reed cleaners out, and let's put aside for the moment that the town owns it, and they were utilizing the property for illicit purposes, you want to have the door restored, and you want to make sure that the property is safe.
I would think that if this was owned by a commercial entity, that they would want to replace the door so they can rent the space.
So you think it's the
It's- I
issue
mean,
is self-regulating?
Yes, and if they don't, then there's a problem.
And so
problem could-
such bylaw is not necessary.
No, I think it's totally necessary, because if there is a problem, listen, it's just a matter, it's life safety, it's quality of life as well. I mean, Street cleaners is a perfect example. I mean, if that building were occupied, if we had the ability to occupy that building, we would have a totally different north part of Main Street, right? It would be completely different. Since then, it's a big eyesore on the community. We all know the reasons why it is, but let's say, again, hypothetically, that it was owned by a private developer, a private commercial developer, and they just decided to leave it that way. I mean, we have no way of getting that property to move, to do anything other than just sit there. And then in the end, if it just sits there and the roof starts leaking, that building is finished. So it has cultural implications. I mean, it's economic implications, the whole thing. So if not this, something for sure, I think is necessary.
I just,
So
there-
I'm gonna just call time because I don't see any consensus on this. I think board members should individually go back to the select board with their thoughts on this. I don't see us having any kind of consensus here on this issue. So if you've got suggestions, I'd invite you to individually be in touch with the select board on it.
Can I transmit to the select board simply the fact that the board this board
Discussion was
raised the
had.
discussion was had, refer them to the minutes, but no consensus was reached?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Peter.
do
I
we-
think we do have a consensus that
Yeah.
this is not a bad idea.
yeah,
You know,
I
that
mean,
but the language of it is what we're talking about.
I think it's going to need work, and I don't know if there's enough time to get it, ready for and the select board has to take the lead on this. It's their bylaw, so I don't know if there's going to be enough time to get it ready for town meeting.
Well, I don't know, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, can a citizen bring a bylaw individually?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So I
And
don't,
they don't need public hearing to put it on the warrant, do they?
right.
It's a zoning
So it-
bylaw. It has.
it's not
it's-
zoning.
It's not
Zoning,
zoning, it's
yeah,
a town
it's not
bylaw.
zoning.
It's town bylaw.
Yes, Chris?
You have to take yourself off mute.
It could be proposed by a citizen during a citizen petition time period for a town meeting. Or by petition for a special town meeting.
Okay,
But
so it
it's
would
just-
just
it's
be
not
like-
the
Hold on,
same-
let Chris talk.
It's not the same process as a zoning bylaw, no. It's
Thank
not
you.
like it can just be brought and then go through.
But
So
Chri-
if the select board sees the merit here and wants to work on it, it would have to essentially take it on, work on it, propose it to the town meeting.
Mhm.
Right, and the select board can adopt it and put it on the warrant, right, Chris?
Correct.
Or Mr.
So-
Most can propose it as a citizen's.
I think that time is up, though. I think
Right.
Is-
I-
is it-
That
yeah.
passed.
I had asked the select board whether I should present it as a citizen's petition or whether the select board would consider it, and the select board indicated that it would take it up for consideration.
Okay, good. Well,
All right, so Chris, just in terms of report out, and I guess I want the board to agree. We want to say we're not opposed, but believe there are many details to work out. Does everyone agree with that?
Do you need a
Board members
motion?
or- No, I don't think so.
No, because it's just a recommendation.
Just discussion, yeah,
I'll pass that along.
thank you. All right, thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
And thank you for entertaining all our comments and questions. This is
Yeah,
what you
thank
get
you.
when you come into this mix of folks here. All right, so number 7 is board and subcommittee updates, issues and concerns. Jonathan?
I don't know if everyone saw that Baba Louie's is closing
Yeah.
No,
end of March.
disappointing.
So I don't know if that's a concern, but I'm not sure it's a board update.
Not a board concern.
Well, it is a
Alright.
board concern, but
A concern of a board member. Okay, Malcolm?
Just to let you know, we're kind of nervous at BRPC with the in terms of federal funds. So there was there was a point when, there was no, they were blocked altogether, and now they're flowing again, but there's not quite sure where things are going to be going down here. So
Okay,
that's
understood. So don't count on BRPC 100%. Maybe
well,
fluid.
and I will tell you the other thing is that BRPC still has bandwidth. So if there are any town projects that BRPC can help with, BRPC is really interested in trying to get some local work. So
Okay, great, thank you. Pedro, anything for you?
I got nothing.
Jeremy, anything for you?
No.
All right, nothing on my end either. So we'll move to citizen speak. If there's anyone on who would like to make a comment and you want to raise your hand, Chris will work to unmute you. I'll give everyone one more opportunity to raise your hand. I know Zoom's a little bit more complicated. You can raise your hand down on the ribbon at the bottom center of your screen if you're on a computer. All right, seeing no hands raised, we'll adjourn at 8:21. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
our
see ya.
next meeting will be, what is it, February 27th? Is that what it is? Yeah, February 27th. We'll see you guys then.
Yay.